What is up, guys, and welcome back to another Transformers video here today, where today we will be diving into one of the biggest unanswered questions from the Michael Bay Transformers movies, which would be, how did Galvatron restore his body and revert back to Megatron after Age of Extinction? This theory has a lot of roots to follow, so without further ado, let's get right into it. After his decapitation by the hands of Optimus Prime, or should I say, hand of Optimus Prime, at the end of Transformers Dark of the Moon, many Transformers fans wondered if they had seen the last of the leader of the Decepticons in Michael Bay's installments. But it was not long before the follow-up film, Transformers Age of Extinction, would tease the introduction of none other than the evil lord's rebirthed form, Galvatron. The question was, how connected would this new Galvatron be to the live-action's rendition of Megatron? Bay had not been shy about his eagerness to drastically change aspects of the original source cartoon, but what did he have in store for the antagonist first introduced in Transformers the movie in 1986, when the Chaos Bringer Unicron intercepted the decaying body of the Decepticon leader, reformatting him into his greatest champion, Galvatron? To set the stage, in Age of Extinction, we are introduced to the tech company KSI, founded by Stanley Tucci's Joshua Joyce, who began KSI as a boy with a dream to make the world a better place. After the Decepticon invasion of Chicago, KSI began reverse engineering Cybertronian corpses in an attempt to create man-made Transformers for military use. Joyce came into contact with CIA operative Harold Attinger, who promised him a seed, which he would have gotten in exchange with Lockdown, with which he could make more Transformium, the metal which all Transformers come from, in exchange for 500 million shares of the company. At the time, Joyce was under the impression that Attinger was operating under the discretion of the US government. KSI built as many as 50 Transformers, all under remote control, including Stinger, Junkheap, a number of KSI Sentries, KSI Bosses, and the most iconic Shockwave two-head Transformers. The pride of their CEO was Galvatron, a drone created directly using the data from the remains of Megatron's severed head. Easily their most impressive creation, Galvatron was armed with a particle cannon, double arm blades, a chest grinder, the ability to transform from Freightliner Argosy cab into little particles of Transformium into his humanoid form, and the ability to hack into prototypes, with the potential for higher levels of technological manipulation. The Autobot captive brains unit was forced to work for them and was tortured whenever he spoke. Because of this, he declined to tell them Megatron was still alive and manipulating KSI even from beyond the grave. But more specifically, Megatron saw the Galvatron drone as an opportunity to return to the land of the living, with Galvatron to be used as a new body, resulting in it always looking like him instead of Optimus Prime. Megatron's mental infection also made Galvatron capable of acting on his own and able to override the other drones. He bided his time, waiting for KSI to get the seed so he could cyberform Hong Kong, creating a gateway for the creation of a new Decepticon army, a process that would result in the death of millions. After Cade Yeager breaks in and reveals the horrors taking place within KSI to the waiting Autobots, Optimus leads them charging in, destroying the entire Transformium lab. When the Autobots leave, Attinger has Joyce deploy their two most powerful drones who were spared, Galvatron and Stinger. Unknown to KSI, Megatron was eager for revenge on Optimus and transferred his mind to Galvatron. When the drones were deployed, Galvatron rebelled violently, killing civilians freely and even revealing his capacity to speak. He was only able to engage briefly with Optimus as Lockdown quickly arrived on scene and took control. When they were recalled, Joyce had all the prototypes moved to a Chinese facility and expressed his fury that Galvatron had malfunctioned. Joyce's mindset was further rocked after Attinger revealed that he alone had been backing KSI's Transformium project, not the CIA, as Joyce has been led to believe, effectively making Joyce an accessory to his actions and a war criminal. After a call from Cade Yeager alerting him to Galvatron's true nature, Joyce ordered Galvatron to be placed under extra security. Knowing his plans had been falling perfectly into place, Galvatron activated himself, announcing his sentience and granting the same freedom to the KSI clones. He had them destroy the facility and ordered for them to find the seed, which had been passed from Lockdown to Attinger after their deal and exchange of Optimus Prime. While all the prototypes were seemingly destroyed in the subsequent battle with the Autobots and Dinobots, Galvatron survives, knowing the battle was lost, fleeing to the hills to escape as Optimus was busy dealing with lockdown. Now is where we begin to enter the territory of more theory and speculation, as we have to use the clues from the movie and the sequel, The Last Knight, where we see the same character only back as Megatron, no longer Galvatron. We know that at some point after the Battle of Hong Kong, the mysterious creator, Quintessa, is the one to credit for the conversion of Galvatron back to Megatron, made clear as he is not only acting under her orders in The Last Knight, but he also bears the distinctive red mark across his face, the same Optimus has when he's under her spell and briefly becomes Nemesis Prime. Things get more complicated from here, as there's absolutely no explanation of how Megatron and Quintessa come into contact, how soon he returns to Earth, or how his appearance and alt mode completely shift, and the reasoning behind his reclamation of his former identity of Megatron. What's interesting to note is there are multiple examples further confirming that Megatron has fully retained his memories from his past life via his connection with his longest-serving Decepticon soldier, Barricade, who had remained stationed on Earth century since the events of the 2007 movie. We also see Megatron pick up the head of his former treacherous second-in-command Starscream in Cade's junkyard, and he speaks to him in an almost reminiscent way, gazing upon his remains. Even in his final moments on screen, Megatron is fighting the Autobots and the crashing remains of Cybertron in orbit on Earth. When Prime severs his arm, he's still able to continue to fight. He stops while struggling with Prime to remark, "We were brothers once," to which Prime replies once before blasting Megatron with a damn near roundhouse kick through the side of the building, or the structure, I should say, and he is never to be seen again in this movie. And of course, this is the last Bayverse installment, so this is the last we have seen of this Megatron. His death is unconfirmed, and of course, you don't see the body, he's not dead. So his fate is a topic for another video, but back to examining the transition for Transformers 4 to 5. To answer the first question, how did Galvatron get from Earth to Cybertron? And before even getting too far into that, we know that Galvatron had to reach Quintessa on Cybertron, as she stayed there to guide Cybertron to Earth, and she was showed to have no capacity or any advanced interstellar travel or evidence of leaving there between her encounter with Prime there and from what we see in the movie as she is traveling there as Earth and as Cybertron is traveling to Earth. We also know that despite Megatron's ability to fly in Transformers 1 through 3, the Galvatron body did not display the capacity for flight. Although during transformation, Galvatron transitioned into cube-like transformium matter, shifting through the air at an almost metallic liquid-like cube-like structure, the Transformers themselves displayed no ability to fly while transforming or adapt to a separate alt mode more compatible with aerial travel. So combining that knowledge with the fact that the last shot we see of Galvatron is him ascending to the hills away from the main city, I would guess that Galvatron traveled directly to the valley of the crash site of the ship from the smaller dropship from Lockdown's vessel, where the Autobots were traveling in when they first ascended to Hong Kong, where Prime, Crosshairs, Drift, and the Dinobots landed, and they were separated from the rest of the Autobots and the human protagonists who fell out onto the rooftops of Hong Kong. Although we see the ship is damaged as it crashes into the valley, we know that Galvatron's form allows him higher control of technology, lending to the idea that he possibly might have been able to more hastily repair it. Or another alternative, which is not as unlikely as it might sound, is the idea that a smaller ship itself, or this smaller ship itself, possessed an escape craft type of vessel capable of carrying Galvatron alone off-world. And I think this is a much more likely scenario than the idea of maybe Galvatron remaining on Earth or returning to a KSI facility for more transformium or seeking any kind of technological advancements that could potentially upgrade himself to gain the capacity to change forms or gain flight. So, arguably the most convincing part of this idea is the fact that Galvatron had already made his trip to Quintessa, returned to being Megatron, returned to Earth, and had been operating on Earth for nearly a year, traveling the world and monitoring Unicron's emerging horns. And he was doing all of this while Optimus was drifting through space, yet to even reach the remains of Cybertron drifting through space with Quintessa. So again, even if Galvatron gained the potential for flight on Earth, we saw what happened to Prime as he froze over and entered stasis, just literally seamlessly drifting through space. He was not controlling his flight. He was just drifting, and he was basically in stasis lock until he reheated as he crashed back into orbit and reawokened onto the surface of Cybertron. It's very reasonable to assume if Galvatron did the same thing, if he raw dogged the cosmos like Prime, the same fate would have befell him. Once Galvatron arrived on his fractured homeworld, it makes sense to think he would take the same path as Optimus Prime, likewise stumbling upon Quintessa in an adversarial manner. But unlike Prime, I think Galvatron might be more keen on hearing her out, and then I actually think that he may be willing to agree to be her thrall. Because if you pay attention to the movie, an interesting detail is that both Megatron and Nemesis Prime, after they've been controlled and marked with the red mark on their face by Quintessa, Megatron's eyes remain the same color red as they have been in all of the previous times we've seen Megatron. Although, of course, Galvatron's were orange, we're talking Megatron here because Quintessa would have reformatted him by this point, and although he is the mark, his eyes remain red as they always have been, and Prime, initially, his eyes also remain blue. But we see Quintessa further tortures him as they're journeying closer to Earth, because Prime is not immediately subdued by her influence, and it requires further torture, and then his eyes eventually turn purple. And at that point, it's almost like Prime is operating in a trance-like state, solely focused on carrying out her orders. Throughout the movie, while Megatron is working in the interest of Quintessa, he seemingly has much more free will and ability to roam and dictate his own specific actions as he pleases, and he never really appears to be in the same mentality, kind of like a bound state as Nemesis Prime. Tying back to why Galvatron would be so willing to be subservient to anyone but himself, we must think back to the fact that Galvatron is created by humans. Though Megatron gains mental control by the end, Megatron has always been disgusted by humans, viewing them as inferior insects. The fact that he was bound to a body made by the hands of these creatures would be enough for him to be willing to pledge his service to Quintessa, being that she alone would be the one able to restore him to the form of a true Cybertronian, allowing him to then adapt a new Cybertronian jet mode, and he has this new Gladiator Knight body upgrades, as well as the return of his iconic fusion cannon. Once being restored to his natural Cybertronian form, it would make sense that Galvatron would want to reclaim his true name, being that the consciousness of Megatron always remained intact. And again, the very concept of being rebranded by humans likely disgusted him. All in all, while I would have loved for The Last Knight to have cut a lot of the garbage out of its runtime and replaced it with just a handful of scenes explaining more of Megatron's journey between the movies, I can't help but think that these are kind of the most plausible explanations for his transition from Galvatron to Megatron and how exactly he got from Earth to Cybertron and back, and possibly some further insight behind his motivations and mentality when we see him in Transformers 5. At the end of the day, the Bayverse is over. For now, at least. You never know. But hey, if you've made it this far in the video, thank you for watching, and please let me know down below what you think of this whole idea. What do you think happened? How did Galvatron get to Cybertron? How did the transition go down? Was it Quintessa exactly? What were all the details? Let me know in the comments down below. Likes, dislikes, anything is appreciated, and until next time, peace.